never know. Simple, but for me, super impactful, important, loaded phrase. If you take it in the context of the quote I just showed from Richard Feynman, which if you know him, you know, the scientist, physicist, really brilliant guy. At a first level, he's talking about that very much from a scientific perspective. He understands how hard it is scientifically to prove something, the tests you have to do, how easy it is for something to seem one way, but it's actually another way, how easy it is to miss something, how controlled you have to be in your experiments and rigid in your approach to say like, okay, yes, we've proven this, we know this now. Unbelievably hard. And then you add in the context of like, you know, what do we know today versus what do we know 50 years from now? So in some ways, you never really prove anything scientifically because things are always changing. We're gaining more knowledge, we get more insight. And I think that's kind of where he was heading with that quote, is beyond scientifically, more philosophically. It's almost impossible to actually know something, right? You never know, back to my point. And again, I think that's an unbelievably important phrase because conceptually, I think most of us understand that concept, that it's really hard to really know something, right? If you press somebody on something that they think they really know, it typically doesn't take too long before they recognize, like, well, I guess I don't really know for sure. But the odds are, probability suggests, right? That type of thing. But conceptually, we understand. We understand that it's better to be more open-minded. It's better to try and gain more perspective. It's better to be more humble in our thoughts and acknowledge the fact that we might be wrong and we don't know this for sure. It's better for all those things. But at the same time, we are so drawn to the idea of certainty. We are so drawn, almost like a gravitational pull to that, because the sense is that it would be so much better. Life, the world would be so much better if we could just have certainty, if we could know for sure. Because imagine, right? Imagine what a luxury and a benefit and a blessing that would be if we knew without a doubt that if you do this, this is going to happen, that this is the right decision you should make, that this is what it means to be good, that this is exactly how you should treat people. In some ways, that would be amazing. It would be so much easier for us to act and interact in the world. And what happens is, most times, for most of us, myself very much included, we act more in accordance with what we wish the world was, rather than what it actually is, right? And my best sense, my best read of it is, unfortunately, the world just isn't that way. We don't have that luxury. Certainty doesn't actually exist in most forms. To Richard Feynman's point, it's really hard to know something. So I believe you never know. We're never going to get to that point. And that's hard. That's hard for people to accept and to embody. Because living a life and making decisions and taking actions when you're working under this premise that you never know, that can be very limiting, right? Firstly, when you're looking to make a decision, right? You're trying to decide, should I change careers? Who should I marry? You know, what do I really care about? What should I do with my life? I would argue that that should take a lot of thought, a lot of reflection, a lot of trying to get different perspectives, really trying to open your mind and think about it in different ways. It takes a lot of work. But people, they want certainty, right? You do all that work because you acknowledge that you don't really know and you might never know. So you're trying to give yourself the best chance to get to a better outcome. But that slipperiness of it, the fact that you don't know if you'll get to the better outcome, and furthermore, you might not even know what a better outcome is. How could you know that for sure? Most people, conceptually, mentally, they don't want to go there. It's too hard to go there. It's too hard to get your arms around that. So they act as if there is certainty. They just make decisions based on what they want to believe is true with certainty, right? So that's always difficult. And then even as you play it out, right, I would argue to the point, you never even know down the road if that's the right decision. Right? You can have inclinations, you can have senses, but people want to know, like, if I do this, am I going to get that? And that's the world they want to live in. That's the construct they want to be in. I believe that's not the real construct we live in. That's not the real world we live in. Right? So examples, I can name a ton of them, but raising my son. There's decisions I make all the time where I think, hey, I should instill this value in him, or I should give him this lesson, or I should respond to him in this way, or I should make sure he understands this. But it's super hard to do that and to do it with confidence because you never know. Is this actually what's better for him? Or would it be better to let it play out a different way? Is this going to hurt him more in life in the long term, or is it going to help him? You never know. You never know. And then you have a choice to make at that point when you don't know, right? Do you act in accordance with the reality as you see it and say, well, listen, I don't know, but I know I have to make a decision. So let me do the work and make as thoughtful a decision as I can, and then be okay with the fact that it's going to play out the way it does. And I may never know for sure if that's the right decision that I made, if it's going to help him in the long run or if it's not, right? You can go that way, or you can go the other way, which is more comfortable, which seems more natural to us, which is to convince yourself in your mind that you do know. This is the right approach. This is how I should raise him. This is what I should teach him. And then this will make the world okay. He'll be okay. He's going to be best off. He's going to be most comfortable or happiest or whatever. And you live in that world. And that's an appealing world to live in, except that I don't think it's real. And that reality will come through, right? You can't hide from that. The truth is the truth, whether we admit it or not. And I think at a very kind of big macro philosophical level, when I think about, right, what is the right approach and how to live? What is the best way to live? What's the ideal way to live? Obviously, I don't know, right, to the point of this whole video. But my best sense of it is the best thing we can do, the highest level of life we can achieve, is to very thoughtfully, very deliberately, and very authentically identify what we value and what matters to us. And those words are important, right? Because you could very quickly do kind of a visceral, kind of raw base level, what matters to me, right? I want to make a lot of money, or I want to, be with a lot of women, or, all sorts of things you might think you want. But you have to put in that work, right? It's got to be thoughtful. It's got to be authentic. Think about what really matters to you in the grand scheme of things, not just in the short term, but over the course of your life. What really matters to you? What do you really value? What makes you feel like, yes, I am net positive in that I am doing something meaningful with my life and I feel good about it. I feel joy and happiness from it. And then once you identify those things, live in accordance with it. Embody it. Do that throughout your life. And that's the best chance you have to live a happy, meaningful, purpose-driven life. That's what I believe. But to the point of this whole video, I also believe the only way you can do that effectively is by embracing this idea that you never know. When you're thinking about those values and what matters to you most, right? Because those are the things, that's what you're putting a lot of stock in. That's what's going to guide and drive your actions. You have to apply this framework that you never know. Are those the right values? Should I be thinking of it differently? Am I maybe hurting somebody by doing this? Can I help more people doing it this way? It's a constant questioning, challenging yourself, dissecting it, looking at it, right? Having the humility to identify, maybe I was wrong in thinking about that. That has to be constant for your whole life. And then when you embody these things, you're going to constantly run into circumstances where you're tempted to go against what you value. And your mind's going to start to concoct stories as to why that makes sense and that's the right thing to do. And you're going to want to just go with it and think, oh, no, I know this is the right way because that makes my life easier. But you have to embrace this mindset of certainty doesn't really exist. You never know. You never know if those values are the right values. You just do your best to try and get your best sense and give you the best chance. You never know if the decisions you're making are going to play out the way you want them to. But you do the work. You do the work to question. You accept the idea that sometimes it may not go right. And most importantly, you accept the idea that you may never actually know at the end of it. You may go your whole life and never really know for sure. You may spend your life living in that ambiguity, in that uncertainty. And as uncomfortable as that is, because it can be day to day, I feel it all the time, where I think like, oh, man, I just wish I could know for sure if this was the right decision. Or it just eats at me, this doubt and this questioning of like, did I do that right? Should I have done it differently? To me, that's part of life. That's just a functional, necessary discomfort that comes with living your life in accordance with your authentic values. And there's no way around it. And I get why people would opt out of that. I do. And I've opted out of it for a long time. But where I sit today, I can't help but think that's the right approach. But again, I don't know.